Welcome back, our s'mores. Welcome back, s'mores, to Beyond the Campfire. We just kind of came up, we're like, why should we just call you people? You're the s'mores to the campfire at Beyond the Campfire. Welcome back. This is episode 18, not 19. I thought it was 19. It's actually 18. And yeah, welcome back. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Beyond Campfire. Um, yeah. So sit down, relax. Steven's got a great spooky tale. It's our first ghost story, kind of, for Beyond the Campfire. So Steve, why don't you tell us what we're talking about?
Yeah, hello everybody. Yep, so I'm Steven, the other co-host. I will not go through all my AKA names because I think that annoys Will. But
A little bit.
yeah, we are talking about the Bell Witch, a Southern folklore story from the 19th century. That's 1800s for you guys that can't do math properly. But yeah, our story starts in Tennessee, and I guess before we jump in, Will, have you ever been to Tennessee?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been
Mhm.
to Chattanooga. Uh, Drove through Nashville. I haven't really stayed in Nashville super long, but yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
not really the place you would think ghostly, ghastly things will happen, but
Well,
nonetheless,
it's you got the Appalachian Mountains there, so that could kind of add a little bit to the folklore. Because me and my folks actually got lost in the mountains one time.
in Tennessee or just the
Yeah,
Appalachian.
no, in Tennessee. So my aunt lives in Kentucky, and so we decided we're going to take a trip up there. We're going to go see her. So we went to Nashville, and then we're like driving through the mountains. And this was like, I don't think we got to Nashville yet, but we were driving through the mountains of Tennessee, and this was back during like when GPS was just coming out. So it wasn't very reliable. And we're sitting there driving, and it says take a left onto an unnamed road. That unnamed road was a cow pasture. So then we had to find a gas station and ask for directions.
Well, at least you didn't run into the not deer or a skinwalker or
Yeah,
anything.
luckily it was daylight and not dark outside, or else I'd be terrified.
Man, I think it takes like 6 months to walk up the Appalachian Trail, something like that.
Yeah.
If you just hiked it straight with no stops. But yeah, so we are talking about the Bell Witch, and it's called the Bell Witch not because it rings a bell. That's what that's what I thought the Bell Witch did. But when I looked it up, I'm like, oh no, it's because it's haunting the Bell family. So we will kind of talk about them, how they ended up in Tennessee, how their life was prior to the haunting. But yeah, so the Bell Witch, you have the Bell family. They're from North Carolina. And in about 1804 or 1805, they moved to Tennessee. And the place where they had their home was near a town called Adams, Tennessee. If you go to Adams, Tennessee, there's a lot of Bell Witch tourism over there. But they're I guess a more precise location is they were kind of northwest of Robertson County, Tennessee. You had the father, John Bell Sr. There's a John Bell Jr. We'll get to him in just a second. So there's John Bell Sr., and then there's his wife, Lucy Bell, and they have their children, the most notable of which is their youngest, Betsy Bell. I'll talk about why she is important in just a second. But yeah, they moved to Tennessee. Some other people from North Carolina moved with them as well, and they set up a farm. They cleared land, began farming, and they were slave owners. So I'll talk about that because that's somewhat related in just a second. But one of their slaves was a man named Dean. Uh, Depending on which version of the Bell Witch story you talk about, he actually is probably the one that probably had the most encounters with the Bell Witch. That's one version of the story, but for the most part, the story really centers around John Bell Sr. and his youngest daughter, Betsy Bell. So far, kind of normal Southern American family.
Yeah, seems like it. Got a couple acre of land, setting up, getting ready, just Trying to live life.
Yeah, absolutely. So 1804, 1805, they moved there, and things are normal. And then things really start to become weird in 1817. So 1817, some strange events start to happen around the property where the Bell Witch is, or rather the Bell household, soon to be haunted by the Bell Witch. But John Bell is walking through his cornfield, and he sees a large dog, which he says also has the head of a rabbit. Obviously, yeah, some kind of weird dog rabbit chimera. Obviously, that alarms him, and so he shoots at it, and it runs away completely unharmed, even though he's pretty sure he had hit it. So obviously, that's weird. Uh, Things start to get weirder from there, but that's kind of the first noted paranormal incident that happens with him.
Why is it always got to be cornfields?
I know, right?
Like UFOs making crop circles in cornfields. Always in a horror, like the Children of the Corn. It's just always cornfields. I don't get it.
They really want to get their corn, I guess. So
It's very corny of them to do
I,
this.
Um, so weird things start to keep being seen. John Bell Sr.'s son, Drury, not long after, sees a turkey, but it's a lot larger than most other turkeys. It's about the size of a small deer. And he also goes back and he gets a gun and he tries to shoot it, but by the time he comes, it has flown away. So obviously, weird things are happening. Both Drury and John Bell Sr. are like, well, we've moved to a new state. We're going to see some creatures we've never seen before. And they kind of just dismiss it as that. Um, Not sure I would ever encounter a dog with a rabbit's head anywhere in the world, but I
Hmm.
guess, they wanted
Well,
to,
well, you
they
got to
wanted to
kind of
deal with
think
it.
about
So
it. You got to kind of think about it like this. You're saying this is the 1817. America really wasn't founded, not long before this. Probably 1776 was when the Declaration of Independence was signed. That was about 24 years before the 1800s. So you're really looking at some of these people that, are living on this bell farm probably fought in the revolution. So that just kind of shows you how young our country was and how unexplored it is. And I think that kind of adds a little bit to some of the reasons we have some people still believe in some of these superstitions is because I feel like, a lot of people walk the Appalachian Trail, but there's the trail, but there's so much more embedded in it. There's so many places I think in America that are sort of still a little untouched. People have not settled into. There's no telling what's out there. So you kind of think for these people, it's like, you know, all right, we're gonna pack up our family. We're gonna move to some uncharted land that we've never been to. I mean, yeah, it's probably a state over, but there could be some creatures there that have never been seen in South Carolina, North Carolina, and maybe perhaps to them they were just like, okay, a dog with a rabbit's head. Maybe that's just a normal little creature over here in Tennessee. Maybe the turkeys are bigger on this side. Like when they say the grass is greener on this side of the pasture, well, maybe the turkeys are bigger on this side of the pasture. So I could kind of understand why they're kind of probably not like, all up like, ah, man, we're being haunted. It's kind of like, ah, new land, man. You don't know what's about these mountains.
yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely. I mean, the context is you definitely had the first Great Awakening happening at this time, and so you have a lot of people getting baptized, reading their Bibles for the first time, becoming Christians for the first time, and one of the experiences of that is a great wave of spiritualism. There's some leftovers of kind of Native American spiritualism going on. There's obviously, if you're living in Louisiana, of course we're in Tennessee, but if you're in Louisiana, there's some African paganism things, and America just in general was a very open place to spiritual realities, especially at
Mm-hmm.
this time. And as we kind of get into the story, people are not really questioning some of these accounts that are happening. Um, but so first, it's weird animals. As we get into it, this is where things start to at least escalate in sightings. So Betsy, the youngest daughter, one day she is walking out in the field and she sees what she describes as a pretty young girl in a green dress, and she is swinging on a limb on an oak tree close to the house. So, um, and again, depending on which version of the story you said, she could just be like swinging like a child swinging uh, through the trees. Some other versions of the story, a little bit darker, says that she was hanging from the tree. So, um,
Oh boy.
there's a few versions of that, so whichever one do you want to believe. But she sees this pretty young girl in a green dress swinging or hanging from a tree, and she tries to communicate with the child. Obviously, um, the girl doesn't respond, so she runs back to get her family members. But when they come back, the girl is gone, just nowhere to be
Mm.
seen. Uh, so at that point, the family's getting a little bit worried. Like, okay, this is some weird stuff going on.
Yeah, and so you said it was a little girl that saw the girl hanging from the tree, right? Okay. Yeah. So that's where, because like Maddie and I were, my wife and I were talking, because we haven't announced it on the podcast, I don't think yet, that I'm going to be a dad. But my younger brother, who's couple years younger than me, he's 10. He's been like having dreams that's going to be a boy, and so that's what we were kind of talking about. Like, we think children are probably more susceptible to being open to seeing spirits, to seeing these things. So that's where it kind of makes a little sense that the child kind of sees this kid, and maybe that's why the family took it a little serious, because like you said, this is during the spiritual awakening. Maybe they believe that truly there is something there. So
Yeah, yeah, no, it's very, very possible for sure. So congratulations, by the way. Yeah, I
thank you,
don't know if you've
thank you.
announced on the podcast this, but yeah,
No,
Will is
not
going
yet.
to be a father. So,
Yep.
yeah, congrats to him.
Thank you.
I'll be Uncle Steven, and that'll be that'll be a blessing coming to Will's household. Uh, so pretty much after the girl incident, the animals were weird, but things really start to accelerate. So the spirit, as it comes to be known, later called the Bell Witch, uh, really starts to interact with the family physically, not just through apparitions or off in the distance, but now she is physically affecting the family. So the family members start to hear strange sounds. They hear soft whispering, slight knocking on doors and windows, and gentle rat like scratching. Some versions of the story even have that they are hearing the sounds of choking and strangling. Uh,
Ooh.
um, we'll kind of get into the violence of the Bell Witch in a second. But whenever they heard these weird sounds, the knocking or the scratching, they'd go and try to find out where that was coming from, and it always turned out empty. They never saw any person, they never saw any rats. Just whenever they would go check out the source of the sound, nothing was there.
Mm. Mm, 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 mm.
Uh, slowly, things start to get even worse. The rats they hear the rats gnawing sounds on their bedposts. So imagine you're tucked up in your bed, you're um, in your covers, and all of a sudden you just hear rats gnawing at your bedpost. But when you actually go and look, no rats. But it's loud enough to keep them awake. So they're trying to sleep, they're trying to get a good night's rest, and nope, they hear a rat chomping away at their bedpost or scratching behind the door, knocking at their windows, and
Mm-mm.
yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to sleep if I'm here.
Uh-uh.
Wow.
Dude,
Uh,
it's sometimes like, like you see the memes, like the people where they can't even hang their legs off like the side of the bed because you're scared someone's going to grab your foot.
mhm.
I can't do that. I can't have any body part hanging off the bed.
Oh yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
like,
yeah. I mean, I guess as we'll get into a second, because the bell witch starts to get a little bit more physical than just making the sounds. But the sounds continue. So they hear wings flopping on the ceiling, chains being dragged across the floors, loud, invisible dog fights happening. I don't know if you've ever seen a dog fight.
oh,
I've
I've heard dog fights. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. When I was in India, uh, wow, about 12 years ago now, I was walking through the streets and I would see dogs fighting each other, and yeah, it is not a pleasant noise. Let me tell you, it is not.
Ooh.
When you hear dogs biting each other and you hear the other dog crying out in pain, and they're like, it's not a fun noise. It's not a sound you want to hear. So unless you're Michael Vick, but anyway, bad joke, bad joke. But yeah, there's just these weird sounds going around, and you know, I guess I guess humans have a tendency to get used to anything because eventually they did figure out a way to sleep through this stuff.
Yeah.
I guess you got to do what you got to do. But
Yeah.
when they would awake, the bed covers had been mysteriously pulled off of the bed, especially Betsy's. But it was happening to all of them. But yeah, they'd wake up and their bed covers are just gone, pulled off by something.
Mm-mm. Uh-uh. No, no. No, no, no.
Yeah,
See, that's like
I,
that's like the thing to me is like, I think like if you're a person that believes in hauntings and that people can be haunted and that there can be ghosts from beyond the grave to come back and haunt you, like I feel like I could handle, if I'm just, you know, like because I've had paranormal encounters,
mhm.
um, and there's just something about that feeling of knowing there's someone probably watching you, and like, I could handle, a daylight haunting where I'm just probably sitting here, filming with Steven or whatever, and something bangs on the wall or something falls. And it's like, oh, okay. Cause I think what makes it worse at night, and especially like being in bed, is I feel like sleeping in bed and you're so vulnerable, you know? And like, in a sense, it's, in a daytime haunting, something falls off the shelf, it's fine. But at night, I think is that darkness, there's that unknown in the dark and you don't know what's lurking there. So like, your sheets ripped off while you're asleep and you wake up and you're just like, what was watching me sleep? What was here when I was this vulnerable? I think that's what makes it a little bit more terrifying is, imagining laying in bed at night and you hear rats chewing on furniture, or you're laying in your bed in the pitch black and you hear dogs fighting each other and killing each other. And you're just like, you don't know what's making the noise. You don't know if there could be a ghost dog in your house fighting another ghost dog, or rats could actually be in your home. You don't know that sort of stuff, and it's kind of like that feeling of the unknown. um because like I guess one of the to kind of unfortunately get off topic, but one of the haunting stories I have happened in our house where me and my wife live now. My great grandfather, just to kind of get a little bit into it, was an alcoholic. And we always say, like, as Christians, people face demons. And I kind of thought, well, what if we meant that literally? Like, there was these people that are struggling with these, like, alcoholism, struggling with pornography, struggling with all this. What if there really are demons they are fighting that they are seeing? And so the kind of thought behind it was like, okay, well, if my grandfather, if my great uncle is gone, where are these demons going to go? Well, what if they just inhabit the house waiting for the next victim? So my wife and I, we came over before we moved in. They put some hardwood floors down. We came at night, and opening the door, we were just kind of sitting there. We walked into the living room, and the kitchen and everything was all pitch black. No lights on. Nothing was turned on. It was just all black because we live out in the country, so there's no street lights or anything. So everything is black. And we heard something crash, and like that was it for us. We said we got to get out, and so we left, and it was just this odd feeling. And then before me and my wife got married, I lived in the house by myself. And there's be times at night where I would be laying in bed by myself, trying to go to sleep, and I would think I hear something out in the hallway, or I hear something down in the kitchen. And it was just very uneasy because, we want to go turn on every light. And it's like, well, the light's over there near where the noise is being made. So I can't really go to it. But I think that's just what kind of makes this story a little bit more fear factor is like, it's not happening in the day yet. At least not, there's been some things in the day, but most of this stuff is happening at night. And I can't imagine just laying in my bed and hearing a rat chewing on my bedpost, or a dog beating up another dog. Ugh. All right, Steve, carry us home.
Yeah, no, definitely some very disturbing events happening there. Uh, so the sounds are bad enough, but uh, eventually a physical abuse started. So this Bell Witch, the spirit as they called it, started to really torture the family, particularly John Bell Sr. and Betsy. Uh, the other children were bothered, but not quite as much. And actually, surprisingly, John Bell's wife, Lucy, was left alone. She was never bothered.
Hmm.
At one point, the spirit starts to physically talk, and it calls Lucy the most perfect woman living. So it doesn't bother her. It really hates her husband, though, John Bell Sr. The spirit starts to call her old John Bell, and says that one day she's going to kill him. And when asks why do you hate John Bell Sr. so much, she just says because he deserves to be killed. And this would give no further elaboration, but
Dang.
uh, yeah, the spirit starts to be verbally abusive. She's constantly cussing out John Bell Sr., putting him down. She um, John Bell starts to actually be affected by this. He starts to have, not long after the haunting starts, he starts to have trouble speaking, eating, and swallowing. He said he felt like he had a stick of wood lodged between both cheeks in his mouth. And this is a pain that bothered him until his death. He died about 3 years after this haunting started.
Well,
Again, depending on which version of the story, some just said he died of natural causes. Some said the Bell Witch actually got him, that she poisoned him or something like that. Again, it's not exactly super clear how he died, but yeah, he did end up passing away about 3 years later. Again, it's disputed whether it was due to natural causes or poisoning, and if it was poisoning, was it the Bell Witch? Was it somebody else? Um, we don't really
well, I
know.
mean that's the hard thing, I guess. Back then they didn't have autopsies, so
Right.
there's no telling. Could the Bell Witch have finally gotten him like she said she would?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So he was bothered quite a bit. Uh, the other person that was really bothered a lot by the Bell Witch was the youngest daughter, Betsy. So the Bell Witch would prick her with these invisible pins that caused Betsy a lot of great pain. It would slap her on the face until her face was red, and then drag her around her room by her hair. And this was abuse that repeatedly happened.
Good
It got
lord.
so bad that the family was afraid, is the Bell Witch going to kill our daughter Betsy? So they actually sent her to friends' houses to spend the night. Uh, Sometimes that worked. Other times, the Bell Witch actually followed her to the friend's house and would continue to
Oh man.
torture her there. So, uh, yeah, I mean, sometimes they would ask the spirit, the spirit started to talk at some point. Um, Pretty clearly. I'll actually get to the spirit talking in a second, because one of the children, not that she was exactly nice to this person, but she was friendlier towards uh, John Bell Jr., more so than some of the others. But yeah, they would ask her, like, "Why are you bothering Betsy?" And the spirit would just laugh, and um, yeah, really not give any explanation. Probably the cruelest thing the Bell Witch did, though, to Betsy, was actually caused her to not marry uh, somebody she really loved. So Betsy, as she grew older, fell in love with one of her neighbors, a man named Josh Gardner, and they got engaged. They were pledged to be married, and this drove the Bell Witch absolutely crazy.
Oh
She
man.
started to bother Betsy even more, same kind of stuff as before. But then she also started to chant this. She would chant, "Please, Betsy, please, don't marry Joshua Gardner." And this would go on for months and months and months. And eventually, Betsy started to worry. She's like, "Hey, it's bothering me so much. Is it going to start bothering Joshua?" And she ended her relationship with Joshua.
Good lord, that Bell Witch.
Yeah, that's probably the most well-known Bell Witch story. Obviously, I mean, all the other ones I'm talking about were reported, um, but obviously that's the one that gets talked about the most, because I mean, it is really sad. You fall in love with somebody, and you're planning your whole life, and now because of this spirit or whatever it is bothering you, that relationship's ended now. Like, that's um, That's probably one of the most harsh things that
Mm,
happened. I mean, obviously John Bell Sr. dying again, dispute
yeah,
exactly who did that, but yeah, losing someone you love like that,
yeah,
very.
man. So like, so the Bell Witch slaps her, pulls her by her hair. Are we sure that the Bell Witch is not a lesbian dommy mommy
Uh,
that is like in love with her and is like,
um,
I don't want you to go marry that man because that means that I can't slap you around.
I did find one story. It was probably the most obscure story, and pretty much almost everybody agrees it wasn't in the original canon of stories that were told. But there was at least one story that said that the Bell Witch was in love with a woman, not Betsy, and part of the reason she was lashing out was because she couldn't be with that woman. So
Ah, hey,
I know Pride Month was last month, but maybe if you wanted a little pride in gay pride or whatever in this podcast, well, there you go. There's
there
your
you go. That's the only pride we're gonna give you.
yeah.
Is
That's
that the Bell Witch was a
only
lesbian dommy mommy?
so. Yeah, is the Bell Witch that? Well,
Oh boy.
that might be a poll we put up on the Instagram story. Is the Bell Witch a lesbian dummy mommy? You decide. You
You
decide.
decide.
But there, I'm gonna talk about the last four children, and I'll speed run through these because they're not quite as significant, but they are interesting in their own ways. So there's Joel and Richard Bell. They were tormented on occasion, so they weren't bothered the way that John Bell Sr. or Betsy was. But they would go to sleep, and the Bell Witch would take off their covers and laugh.
Mm.
Probably the most notable thing that happened with them is one day Joel got really mad at it and he yelled at the Bell Witch to stop taking off his covers as he slept. And the Bell Witch spit on him, causing the other brother, the yeah, not the Hakatua kind of way that that internet meme that's been going around lately.
I was wondering we were gonna eventually say hawk two and spit on that thing.
Dude, it's been around on the memes too much for it to not come up on this podcast.
Dude, did
So
you know that
there
she
you
made
go.
a documentary?
If you ever wanted to see me say Hakatua, there you go. I just said
It's
it for
not
you.
haka, it's hawk two.
Hawk2?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it goes shows how much I watch those memes.
Dude, I've been seeing
Not great.
so many clips about it. Like, have you ever heard the song Indian Outlaw by
Yes. Yes.
yeah. So they changed it and there's like half Cherokee and hawk two.
Oh man.
And then there's like, the song War, What Is It Good For? That song that came out in the 60s.
Oh yeah, I think I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
so it goes, so they started hawk two
Oh,
war. What is it good? It was hilarious.
if
There's
you guys
been like
are
so many memes about it.
yeah, if you guys are wondering what we're talking about, I'd encourage you not to look it up. But
You know what's hilarious?
if you want to look it up, yeah, there you go. So
You know what? You know what's hilarious?
what
Is she? I think she was in Nashville when she said that,
was she really? Oh,
and
okay. There
she's
you
from
go.
Tennessee. I'm pretty sure.
Tennessee
So
connection. So,
the Bell Witch reincarnated.
yeah. So
She coming for you, man. She go hawk two and spit on your face.
and well, it's been about 200 years, a little bit more now. I think it's been about 103 years since it ended. Which
No,
I'll
no,
get
it's been
to that.
I was because 1817,
To
2017
1821.
would have
There was
been
another incident of a return in
200.
1828, which I'll get to in a
So
second.
we're almost to 200 years since the
Yeah,
last incident.
at least with the final sighting, depending on
Yeah,
who you ask is the final sighting. But
unless me and Steven go looking for her on the Patreon.
uh, you know, there is a Bell Witch cave, which
Yeah,
I'll probably end. I'll probably end the episode with that because it's not a part of the original canon of stories. It's something that comes a bit later, but I think it's
yeah.
interesting at the
So
very
so if you guys, so as we
least.
finish, before we finish this up, if you guys, want to see Steven get hawk tooed and spat on,
Oh,
go. We're gonna start a Patreon soon. So if you guys,
Haley's
give
gonna
us
have
the
fun making a
numbers.
reel out of that.
Yeah, she is. Give us the numbers, and we'll give you the Patreon, and we'll go find the OG hawk two girl,
Oh man,
and she'll pimp slap Steven, hawk two spit on him, the whole shebang.
Well, I'm going to wrap up the Joel and Richard thing, but she might do a little bit more than just that. So after Joel spit on her, uh, Richard, his brother, gets really mad, and then he yells at the Bell Witch. And well, the Bell Witch is already mad. You know, she just spit on Joel, so she actually pushes Richard down, and she starts to spank him. So Joel is just right there, and he's just
She
watching his
is
brother
a
get.
dummy mommy.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that because I'm like, oh, Will's gonna have fun when I mention this story.
Oh my
So
gosh. So she's pimp slapping people. She's hot to spitting on them. And then she's bending them over her knee and giving them a good old whooping.
yeah, that's the most that happens with Joel and Richard. Like I said, she doesn't bother them as much. That's about as much as she
Dude,
bothers
that would
the
that would
individual.
shatter my manhood. If I got like thrown over and spanked by a ghost woman,
I mean, it is a Bell Witch,
being
I
spit
mean,
on is one thing.
yeah, yeah,
Being
no,
bent over and spanked.
yeah, yeah, no, it was it was quite the thing to happen. Okay, I got two children. I'm gonna very briefly go through them, and then I'll probably end with the 1828 reappearance,
Mm.
and then the Bell Witch Cave. So we actually probably have another 10-15 minutes. This actually might end up being a little bit of a longer episode, but we'll try to keep it brief. So um, John Bell Jr. He is very interesting. So uh, John Bell Jr. Lucy Bell, the wife, obviously loved all her children, but she had a particularly special love for John Bell Jr. And the Bell Witch obviously really loves Lucy. She called Lucy the most perfect woman to ever live, never bothered her. So she started to have, some kind of affection with John Bell. But they were really interesting because she didn't bother him, but they would sit down and they would have intellectual conversations.
Wow.
Yeah. They talk science, religion, theology. The Bell Witch apparently knew the scriptures a lot of it, so they would debate
Huh.
Bible topics and things like that. So she and John Bell Jr., for whatever reason, they'd be sitting by the side of the road drinking sweet tea and talking about Calvinism or something like that. I don't know.
Good. Wow. Okay. Well, this just took a real wow. That's a turn right there.
Yeah, definitely an interesting turn.
She's over here, pin pricking, pimp slapping, dragging a woman by her hair. She's hawk to spinning on someone. She's bending someone over and spanking them. But then she's over here with this guy sitting there talking about scripture.
hmm
Mm.
Yeah, very interesting. This is the last little bit of John Bell Jr., but Bellwitch would often give John Bell Jr. advice, and he usually would not listen to it. Probably the most famous example was, so he was about to go out of town to settle some family business, and Bellwitch told him, "Don't go to town. It's going to be a wasted trip." She's like, "You should stay here because there's a very rich young woman that's about to come in town to visit some friends." And she said, "I know you. I know her. I think you guys could be a good match for each other."
Aw.
He doesn't listen. He goes out of town. Sure enough, it is a wasted trip. And by the time he gets back, the rich young woman had left, so he never meets her. So possibly misses out on the love of his life.
Dang.
Kind of
Just
reminds me of my love life. Um, anyway,
damn. Okay. We're just gonna
we're
take a dark
gonna
turn
pretend
here.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
So we're gonna keep going.
Steven needs a Dommy Bounty Bell Witch in his life.
Oh man, Will is gonna start a fan fiction now about me and the Bill Witch. So I don't know if all of you know this, but Will, wait, did you ever release that fan fiction about me and the
No.
not dear?
I asked Chat GBT because I'm not gonna write it because I'm not gonna waste my life doing that.
Okay,
Like,
got it.
no offense to Steven.
No, that's.
Writing a
I mean,
fanfic about him and the Not Deer is not worth my time.
right.
So I used Chat GBT and I said, write me a love story between Steven, the Not Deer, and Mothman. And I
Wow.
like wrote out this whole story and yeah. Unfortunately, if any of you guys want it to be any raunchy, I can't do that because Chat GBT will not go that far.
I am grateful that it's not raunchy.
I'm just really scared, Steven, that as we become more popular and as you keep talking about, the Bell Witch or the Not Deer or whatever, we're gonna find a Wattpad story
Oh man. Well,
of Steven and the Not Deer and the Mothman and the Bell Witch.
Well, I already have ChatGPT writing fanfic about me. I don't need real people writing
But see,
fanfic.
the problem with the real people is it's going to be really worse
Oh
because they're not
yes.
restricted like ChatGPT.
Don't give our listeners ideas, Will. Sheesh.
Hey, don't listen to us.
I know. Haley's gonna make a reel out of this and broadcast it to the world, and next thing you know, there's gonna be Will and Steven fan fiction next week. So
I'm really scared for like when we start because like the plan is like as we become more and more and start trying to pull this towards more full time. Like obviously we'll have an office and everything, and I was thinking about opening up a PO box at some point to where people could send us like fan mail and art or whatever. I'm really scared for fan art just because I know what could
yeah,
pop up.
let's see. We might get some cool one. Like maybe you have you and me with like I have a sword, you have your gun, and we're like fighting some kind of monster.
And then
That
we
would be
got
cool fan art.
Steven bent over the Bell Witch's knee getting
Okay.
spanked.
I hope we don't get fan art like that, but okay, last family member, and then I'm going to talk about the disappearance of the Bell Witch, her reappearance, and then lastly the Bell Witch cave. So the last family member is Lucy Bell, and uh, the Bell Witch actually treated Lucy Bell very nicely. We don't really know why, but Lucy Bell would complain to the Bell Witch like, "Why are you abusing my family?" And the Bell Witch is like, "Well, I do hurt your family, but I would never hurt you."
Oh,
Which, like, okay, that's kind of nice. Uh, this was further solidified. Lucy later got ill, and the Bell Witch would talk to her in a soft, kind voice, and even brought her grapes, one of her favorite fruits, even though it wasn't the season for grapes. Like, grapes just started to appear at her bedside. Um, Later, the Bell Witch found out Lucy liked nuts, so she started to drop hazelnuts on her bed. Um, they would fall from the ceiling to Lucy's bed. Lucy then said she can't eat the nuts because she could not crack them open. And later on, cracked nuts, hazelnuts, started to fall on her bed. So whatever it was, the Bell Witch really seemed to take a liking
oh,
to Lucy Bell, kind of looking out for her and taking care of her. Uh,
that's so sweet. The Bell Witch is
I
like,
guess so, man. I guess so.
oh my gosh,
Um,
this Bell Witch is all over the place. She's
so
spanking people, hock-toing, dropping nuts on people,
yeah, the
leaving
Bell Witch
grapes at the
had
bedside.
interesting interactions with each of the family members. The Bell Witch was around for about 4 years. So from 1817 to 1821, obviously John Bell Sr. passes away in 1820, but eventually the Bell Witch one day suddenly announced that she was leaving, and she wasn't coming back. And the family's like, okay. And she said, I'm leaving. She's like, but I will be back in 7 years. And the family's like, okay. So the year was 1821. Supposedly, the Bell Witch is going to return in 1828. And sure enough, the Bell Witch is not seen again for 7 years
Wow.
until 1828. 1828, the Bell Witch, true to her word, returns. Now, though, a lot of the families moved away, but Lucy, the one she liked,
Mhm.
Lucy is now married, has two sons, and the Bell Witch kind of starts to continue the same antics. She starts to pull off the covers, make the weird noises. But this time Lucy's a little bit older. She has children now, and she's just kind of tired of it. She's kind of done with it. So she just tells her family, she's like, guys, she's like, just ignore it. Like, I'm not putting up with this. Not again. I
Yeah.
dealt with this 7 years ago. I don't want to deal with it now. And the Bell Witch kind of just stopped, and she disappeared again, and never returned after that.
Hmm.
Don't know whether it wasn't as fun as it was the first time, or whether she was more scared of a adult Lucy than she was of a younger Lucy. But yeah, I mean, things didn't really continue after that last one.
Hmm,
So
that's good. She probably
yeah,
did get. She's probably like, they won't be put. They'll, that she's like, these guys are gonna be pushovers, just like last time. And Lucy's like,
yeah.
nah, I'm not putting them with your crap. And she's like,
That's her
all right.
last canonical appearance. Other people have claimed to have seen her in the centuries since, most notably in the Bell Witch Cave. And I think we'll wrap up the podcast today's podcast with the Bell Witch Cave. Um, so I'll go ahead and talk about that, and we'll wrap this up. So the Bell Witch Cave was not in the earliest tellings of the story. It came a little bit earlier on. Most people think that it was kind of created a little bit later on. But it's a cave located near Adams, Tennessee, which, again, if you go to Adams, Tennessee, that's where the Bell family lived close to. If you go and talk to people in Adams, Tennessee today, many of them do believe in the Bell Witch. They like talking about the Bell Witch. Actually, one debate in the town of Adams, Tennessee to this day is, can you be a Christian and believe in the Bell Witch? Most
Huh.
of them say yes. They're like, there's spirits in the Bible, there's demons in the Bible. So, like, yeah, you can believe that the Bell Witch actually happened and still be a Christian. Others are the kind of people that would tell you that Pokemon is demonic. And so they would tell you that, no, you can't be a Christian and believe in the Bell Witch. So,
Yeah.
but apparently that's something that is debated in that town today. So, um, but yeah, the cave is approximately about 490 feet long. It's privately owned. However, tours are given there during the summer months and in October. So, well, if you ever want to do a Patreon trip over there, we could go
Oh yeah.
and see it. But the cave is located on property that once belonged to the Bell family. Whether they actually used the cave or whether the Bell Witch actually had any interactions, again, most of those stories came later on. But the popular legend that came later on after most of the Bell Witch stories is that a young Betsy Bell and some of her friends went exploring in that cave. And while they were climbing out, one of the boys was trying to crawl out of the cave, but he got stuck. Um, and they tried to pull him up, but apparently they said that invisible hands were grasping his feet and pulling him back into the cave. Eventually, they were able to free their friend, and they said that the Bell Witch appeared and gave them a lecture about reckless cave exploring. She's telling them, "You don't need to be in this cave. You guys are young. Don't go and exploring caves out of
Yeah.
nowhere."
Yeah.
Not sure how much I believe. I mean, we'll get into my thoughts of the whole Bell Witch incident and whether I actually believe it's true or not in just a second. But I mean, this one kind of felt out of character for the Bell Witch. Like, she gave advice to John Bell Jr. and Lucy Bell. She hated Betsy Bell, so I don't really see her giving her a cave lecture in this. So I'm a little
Yeah.
less open to believing in the Bell Witch Cave, but um, a lot of people do say they believe that that's where the Bell Witch fled to after she disappeared in 1928. The reason people believe she fled there is because modern stories of seeing the Bell Witch, all of them pretty much happened in that cave. So
Yeah.
people go to that cave, some of them spend a night there or cook food or just hang out there. And a lot of sightings of her, there's been sightings of large animals around that area, kind of like the first few instances. There's been reports of seeing a woman walking around laughing near that cave. And those are stories that continue to this day. So, Will, if you and me ever end up there, maybe that's something we look out for. Uh, but yeah, that cave has been accredited with the Bell Witch Cave. People say the Bell Witch is still there to this day. And so, even though it's a tradition that kind of comes a few decades after the original Bell Witch stories, it has now kind of become tied up with the history and tradition of the general Bell Witch
Yeah.
folklore.
Hmm. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I
So that's pretty much all I have. You and me can kind of break down whether we believe these stories or not. So, well, I'll let you go first.
I think it could be possible. I know like a lot of people are probably like, oh, well, we already knew you were going to say this is possible because, you're more open to this stuff. But like, a lot of it, it's very interesting and it's very hard to kind of break apart what you think could be true, what could be true. I think some of it could be true. There are some things that kind of, we talk about demonic spirits, and that's where I could see it being demonic. But what kind of throws me off of it being demonic, but also could kind of play more into it is, sitting there and, speaking with, John Bell Jr., speaking with Junior about, here's some scripture, here's some stuff, because even the devil knows the Bible, and that's where that could kind of feed a little bit into it. Now, what kind of makes me a little, kind of hard to think, could it be real, is that, why would the devil give this person advice? Advice that could really help benefit their life. Because as we know, the devil wants, to destroy us because, as Christians, that's where it's a little bit skeptical. Same thing with him not targeting Lucy, but targeting everyone else. I think it still could be possible because, we truly don't know. Like, I mean, we kind of have a little idea of what spirits roam this world and everything, but we truly probably don't really know. And there's probably a lot of mystery still. So could the Bell Witch actually be this spirit of a witch that just roams the earth? Maybe. Could the Bell Witch cave be her home? Very possible. If I was a witch, a dommy mommy lesbian witch, I'd want to hang out in a cave. That's my sex cave.
Oh boy. Well, luckily we haven't had anything too weird like that happen in the game, from what I know. But I'm more skeptical. Uh, I will admit this: the legends have been around for a while. Most of what I just kind of got our information from was an 1894 book by a newspaper editor named Martin Ingram. He published the authenticated history of the Bell Witch. Now, 1894, probably you're like, well, yeah, Stephen, we kind of see why you're skeptical. Obviously, this is written several decades after the event. However,
Yeah.
he talked to relatives of the Bell family. He talked to people in the town that possibly knew them. He talked to one of the grandsons of, I believe, John Bell Jr. And also, I mean, the townspeople had been orally sharing these stories for decades. Uh, some people kind of look down at oral tradition. I actually think a lot of history has been preserved through oral tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what Where I get skeptical is, yes, people can be sharing these stories, the relatives can be saying these things. How authentic is it? How,
Yeah.
like, how do you verify it? Um, like John Bell Jr.'s grandson is like, oh yeah, I used to talk to my great aunt Betsy, and great aunt Betsy was telling me all these stories, and it's just like, okay, well, is she telling stories to tell stories? Are these things that actually happened to her?
Yeah.
How much of it was now? I might surprise some people. I do think there's a little bit of truth. I do think something happened from 1817 to 1821. I think as the stories got not just around Tennessee, but it actually started to spread throughout the southern United States, I think people started to add to it. I think people started to exaggerate some details,
Yeah.
and I that's where I'm just like, okay, this sounds like a story that spread throughout the very religious, spiritual southern United States and got blown out of proportion as it spread from town to town, city to city.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's various descriptions of some things. So, but actually, I think I might be with you. I think it's possible. A lot of the stuff,
Yeah.
demons are bad news. They act weird. I think probably the John Bell Jr. stuff is probably exaggerated. But I think the things of like abusing John Bell Jr. or abusing Betsy are probably some truth to that. Uh, I'm not sure how much he actually played a role in stopping Betsy's relationship with Joshua Gardner. Like, as sweet as it sounds, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, she's giving up the marriage to stop this ghost. I could also see it like they had a bad fight and she just wanted to break up with him. And well, breakups were a little bit harder to do in the 19th century than it is in the 21st century, for better or for worse. So
Yeah.
I think she's just like, okay, well, let me just say this so I can have a reason to break it off. I don't know. I
Yeah.
could be.
We don't know. Who knows? If the Patreon starts and means to even go out there, who knows what's going to happen to us? You know.
Yeah. So At the risk of continuing this on and continuing to talk about lesbian dummy mommies or Hawk 2 or whatever else weird stuff was talked about in this podcast, that's all I have. Will, do you
Yeah.
have any concluding thoughts, comments, or questions before we wrap up
No,
this
we
very
we once
strange
again
episode?
we once again have gone off rails.
Got off the rails.
That's
Yeah.
what I think makes us so unique, is most people, they can go listen to an informative podcast where they sit there, they tell you the story, and that's it. No, me and Steven, we tell you the story, but we add in our own stories. We'll tell you with a little bit of our own humor.
Fan
That's what makes
fiction
us.
might get randomly created along the way for
Hey,
who knows
you know what?
why.
It's fun. We're having fun. Yeah.
There you go. So that'll do
And
it. Yeah, we will. I
mhm.
guess we'll see y'all next week. Any announcements, Will, before we wrap up?
Well, we're moving Steven's podcast launch date to next Monday.
Yeah, I've been a very busy boy,
He's
unfortunately,
been very busy.
but good busy, but busy
Yeah,
nonetheless.
but busy nonetheless. So, alrighty. Well, we'll talk to you guys later. Y'all have a good weekend. It's still the summer, so go hang out with friends, go to the pool. Unless you got a job, then it's still Saturday. Mow the lawn. All right, we'll talk to you guys later, and we'll see you on the next episode. All righty.